Hey guys, and welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to talk a little bit more about my plans with Ryzen 3000, specifically in the motherboard department, because if you haven't been following the news and rumors, you may not be aware that X570 motherboards are expected to be significantly more expensive than the X470 and X370 motherboards, and that's why I'm really strongly considering, in fact at this point I would say I'm leaning towards, getting a high-end X470 motherboard for my purposes and my testing. So before we go in and talk about why I'm starting to lean towards X470, let's talk a little bit about X570, the brand new chipset and of course motherboards from the AMD side of things. And the big feature that X570 is going to support that X470 and back will not support is going to be PCIe Gen 4, which at the moment doesn't really do me any good because I don't have any storage that's going to be able to take advantage of that increased bandwidth. I don't have, any NVMe drives that are PCIe Gen 4, and my graphics card is a 1080 Ti. So really, I can't take advantage of the newest feature and really the biggest deal about X570. But for that support, X570 motherboards are actually giving up quite a bit. First and foremost, X570 boards are significantly more expensive. In fact, I've seen rumors floating around that they're going to be about $100 more than their comparable model X470 boards. Take the Asus X470 Prime Pro, and by the way, this is the 370, which is my actual daily driver, but the 470 costs around $150 right now. The rumor is that board on the X570 chipset is going to cost more like $250, which is right there where an X470 Crosshair Hero 7 motherboard from Asus comes in. And by the way, the Crosshair Hero 7 has a fantastic VRM that's going to be able to handle any of the 12-core Ryzen 3000 chips, as well as likely any of the 16 cores down the road, those 3950Xs that launch in September. The Hero 7 should be just fine for those, again, provided that you're not needing PCIe Gen 4. And then the other major sacrifice X570 is making is because the X570 chipset is more power hungry, it generates more heat. Most motherboard manufacturers are putting a fan on that, though you could put a large heatsink on those chipsets. It looks like pretty much everyone's just going with the chipset fan. And the problem with that is, in the past, with the older motherboards that used to use chipset fans more regularly, that was a common point of failure for a lot of those fans. And if that fan fails, that chipset will overheat because the heat sinks being put on those chipsets are pretty small, with the idea that there's just going to be an active fan constantly slowly running to circulate air. Without the fan, those heat sinks probably won't be able to get enough air over them to pull enough heat away to keep those chipsets cool. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm really hoping with as expensive as these X570 boards are going to be, I really hope we're putting quality fans on them, but there's just no guarantee of that. And X470, X370, B450, I don't know that we're really going to see any B350 support, but fingers crossed that does happen. But regardless, those older generation motherboards just won't have that issue because they just have a solid chunk of metal as a heatsink, and that's really all they need. Hey guys, Editing Shane here, and one thing I did want to mention is you may see better RAM compatibility with X570 versus X470. Specifically, you may be able to push your RAM to a higher speed on X570, whereas X470 is very stable up to about 3200 megahertz. If you're going beyond that, you may get some hit or miss results. X570 should be able to clock up fairly far past that. So if you are wanting to push your RAM speeds to their utmost, then maybe X570 is more in line with what you need. But for the vast majority of everyone that's running that 3200 megahertz or less, I think X470 is just fine. Now to go into a little bit more why I'm going with the X470 board, we're just going to take a look at the zoomed in picture here on Amazon. And I want to point out that what we have here is a 10+2 phase VRM. That's 10 phases for the V-core and then a 2-phase for the SoC, which this motherboard doesn't even support video out, so there's really no demand on the SoC whatsoever. And that 10-phase is overkill, at least according to Billzoid, who did a video for Gamers Nexus a long time ago, I believe, about this exact motherboard, which is why I'm leaning towards this specific model. That, in addition to, I've run Asus boards for a long period of time, and I've always had great luck with them. I really like the UEFI layout, and that's probably mostly out of familiarity, but I really like these boards. And this VRM, especially with the 8-pin plus the extra 4-pin EPS connector, there's going to be no issue pushing enough power to this CPU without worrying about the VRMs getting overloaded or anything like that. So this X470 motherboard I think would serve my purposes really, really well. It's a feature-rich motherboard and costs in the neighborhood of $250, which definitely will be less expensive than these X570 motherboards. And that's the primary cause that I'm leaning towards it, is I feel like as the PCIe Gen 4 support matures, over time we're going to see those prices of not just X570, but any motherboard chipsets that come out after X570, 670 for example. I really feel like we're going to see the pricing of those motherboards start to slowly fall back down to earth. And in the meantime, I can save some money now, save about $100 now as a matter of fact. And then when those motherboards get a little bit less expensive down the road, I can always upgrade to something else. But right now, I don't need PCIe Gen 4, and PCIe Gen 3 with an X470 motherboard would serve me great. And according to AMD, as well as the independent review that came out early about the Ryzen 3600, it looks like X470 is not going to limit the actual CPU performance whatsoever. And that's been AMD's line, as well as, again, that independent review that came out a little bit early. So I'm going to link both of those down below. In fact, I'll go ahead and link that Buildzoid video about this specific motherboard as well, in case you're considering an older generation motherboard, whether it's X470, B450, X370, whatever the case may be. But I'll link some resources down below so you can take a look and make an informed decision for yourself. But because B550 is not going to be out, which is going to be the less expensive of the newer chipsets, I really think that these older motherboards might be the way to go for the vast majority of people, unless you're planning on making use of PCIe Gen 4 right now. I really think this is the direction that you should take, and this is definitely the direction that wow, I think I just talked myself into it. This is going to be the direction I think I take with it as well. But of course, I always like to kick it back to you. If you're upgrading to Ryzen 3000, are you sticking with older generation motherboards, or are you going to upgrade to X570 as well and just take the plunge? Let me know down below. And of course, if you like the video, hey, give it a like, share, subscribe, comment. All those things help out the channel a lot. You can follow me on Instagram and on Twitter at Hoosier Hardware. And as always, I'll let YouTube queue up a couple more videos from my channel for you to watch. I'm Shane with Hoosier Hardware, and I'll see you guys in the next video.